Hello, fellow humans. Chris here again, reporting from inside. So, today I just wanted to talk briefly about my first hearing examination. I know that at least a couple people expressed a little bit of interest in that whole thing and how that worked out. So, I will share what happened in a very general sense. I'm not going to obviously going to respect people's privacy. I'm not going to say any identifiers or anything like that. But I can kind of just talk in a nutshell about what happened. So there were kind of two general categories of violations. There was like city code stuff, like junk, household junk, inoperable vehicles being out in front of the house, like public nuisance and just like eyesores, like that kind of thing. And then there was weed abatement, which is pretty much fire hazards. And again, talking about smoke and everything going on in California right now, that is an issue that I am not super apt to be lenient on because of the seriousness of it. So the cases that had, well, I'll go from this way. I'll talk about the things that I did appeal, and those ones were basically things where the person did make a good faith effort to fix it, and then ultimately did fix it, or if they had some extreme extenuating circumstance. So the cases where I appealed in this one of them was somebody that had basically junk debris in the front of their house and then an inoperable vehicle in the front of their house. And the initial pictures showed it looked pretty bad. It was very messy and disorganized and disheveled. And there was a car that was tires were clearly flat. It was looked like it had been vandalized. So clearly it did represent a violation. And I've said this before, my job in this role is not to determine if a violation occurred or to interpret code. That's already been done. These people have already been pegged for violating something. So that's not what I'm looking at. But I'm listening to the story. So when the city officials came back for the second round to check that it was still in violation, it was still in violation. I should step back for just a second. So what they do is they make the first notification that a violation is there, and they notify the owner, and they give them a timeline for fixing it. So when they came back for the second time, it was still in violation, therefore monetary fine. When I looked at the pictures, the second set of pictures was vastly an improvement from the first. The only thing that I could see that was still a technical violation was that the car was still inoperable. There was a flat tire, and it hadn't been taken care of. So her story was that she had a run of the mill with donating this vehicle, and there was a lien put on it at some point, and she had this whole to do with the DMV. I'm very aware that the DMV is a pain in the ass sometimes to deal with, and I appreciated the fact that she wanted to donate the car. I've been in that situation myself where a car becomes more trouble than it's worth. Literally, like the cost of fixing it up is more expensive than the car's worth. So I'm definitely sensitive to that, and it's just been a trying time. And at the time of the hearing, she had been able to figure out a way to get it into a garage and is no longer an eyesore. So I took all that into account. She did have documentation showing different DMV visits. She had documentation showing attempts to donate it, and that you can't donate it if there's a lien on the car. So I waived that one. I gave the appeal, and the fine for that was actually not a monetary fine. It was the cost of what it would cost for the city to come out and move it. And in this case, it would be moving the car, which is now in a garage anyway. So they would still do it. I think like they would take the opportunity to get their money. But I just said, why spend the money to come get the car if it's in a garage now? So I upheld that one. No big loss there. And then the other one I upheld, this was a weed one. This was a weed story, which I did say I'm less apt to be lenient on these, but she had multiple hospital visits, had open heart surgery, and actually had a case of COVID. And I felt she did have an earnest, good faith belief that the yard work person that she had, her gardener, was taking care of the weeds. I believe he did take care of the weeds, but he didn't realize how often he needed to, and there might have been some miscommunication there. I gave that person a break. The rest of them, I either upheld the ruling or I gave a reduced fee. And most of the rest of them were weed issues. And as I said, I'm not super inclined to be lenient on those because of the nature of fire season. And the city does spend a lot of money every year doing these inspections and putting out these violations and then paying people like me to look over them. So I'm cognizant of that this is not just you're just throwing paper at people and asking for money. So I listened to everybody's story, and most of those ones I didn't grant an appeal because the stories usually didn't check out for me in terms of there being like a genuine preclusion of getting the weeds taken care of. One in particular that I didn't grant, what really didn't help them was they said that they had cut the weeds in March, which was before the deadline, but the stipulation on the order was that not only the weeds have to be cut, but they have to be in compliance when we come back out and check. And they came back out and checked in May after April 15th, which was the deadline, and they were not in compliance. And the thing that really didn't help them, for me, was they said, we didn't know when you were coming out. If we knew when you were going to come inspect us, we would have taken care of it before then. And I told them that the intention of the law, the rule here, is not to just have a calendar and say, okay, they're going to come inspect these this day, and this day, and then take care of it then. It needs to be in constant compliance because of the inherent fire danger. And each one of these cases that had to do with weeds, they were designated a fire hazard by the fire chief in the city for each one. So that right there, to me, is strong evidence towards violation. You have to have a pretty good story, in my book, to reverse that. The cases that had to do with fire that aside from the woman, the hospital one that I talked about earlier, there were a couple ones where I reduced the fee. And some of that was basically if I recognized that there was a reasonable, good faith attempt to mitigate the problem, but at the same time being cognizant of the fact that it is a serious responsibility, and it's an important rule to abide by because of the nature of the danger involved. And I just think that as a responsible property owner, you need to find a way to handle these issues because the fires get out of control. So I took people's story into account, and I reduced a few of them because they were respectful and acknowledging that there was a violation. One example where I did technically I actually did grant an appeal, but it basically was a reduction because this person had 3 different parcels of land and was being dinged for all of them. Where I gave him a break was 2 of the parcels of land were right next to each other, and for his perspective, it's just one property. So he kind of felt like he was getting a little bit hosed because he was getting counted for 2 when he just pictured it as 1. So I cut him a break there, and a lot of that again was just because he was being respectful about it. He did acknowledge that he was responsible for it and he didn't take care of it like he should have. So I took that into account and basically gave him a break on that. So he got a pretty good chunk reduced for that. If we had gone ahead and actually put those two properties together, uh, the square footage size of it would have actually made it a higher violation than what we gave him. So he did get a break either way. So anyway, those are the ones that really stuck out. There was a good story about one that happened in the case that I wasn't sitting on when I was watching. So this was a couple weeks before, when I was just observing. The guy, it was an illegal dumping case, and these guys were on video stopping their tow truck and dumping, I think it was a couch, into the middle of a roadway, and turned out that this was a property. This was the property of a business that was right there, and it was on security camera, so it was all caught. And they get into the car, quickly run in the vehicle, and drive away, and then they get caught by, looks like, police or some city officials of some kind right then. So their defense was that they had had an arrangement with the owner that if they come back, as long as they come back before 6, they won't press charges. That's one way to say it, but the actual voicemail that they played, which was, they were playing it in their defense, was a very angry agent or representative of that business saying, I just saw you on camera dumping crap on my property. Please come back and get it, or I will call the cops. And that particular stretch of land, I guess, from what they said, is a really bad spot for illegal dumping anyway. So didn't look good. I wasn't on that one, so it wasn't my decision. But if it was me, don't think I'd be granting a waiver in that case. Didn't seem like a good example of one where I would be lenient. But anyway, that's just in a nutshell how that went. From an administrative point of view, personally, it was pretty stressful, to be honest. It was, especially I think, being virtual, it was still doing it virtually. I think that when I get to be in City Hall and actually like presiding over it, I think I'll be more comfortable. And it's just a little easier to kind of maintain control and see where everybody is, and it's just sort of that formality with 30 heads on a screen, different cameras on the Zoom call. It's kind of intimidating and complex in a way, and it's being your first time as well. I don't know everybody. I got a couple people's names wrong a few times, but everybody was good with me and patient, understanding. So it'll be good. It was a good experience. My next one will be in October, so I'll be looking forward to that. I'm hoping I'll be more seasoned and chiseled by then, and be able to confidently carry out all the duties that I have to. But that was kind of in a nutshell how that went. So hope you like the story. Hope that satisfied you, whatever curiosity you might have had about that. And I will be catching up with you all again very soon. Thanks again for checking in on me, and have a great rest of your day. Remember, don't be afraid to question the consensus.